Namaste. Welcome to our 29th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. We're ready to begin the sixth chapter, which is called the Yoga of Meditation. But like much of the Gita, it will contain many different subjects. All right. Sri Bhagavan Uvachan, the Holy Lord said, "He who performs that action which is his duty," this means also his swakarma, the things that have been created by his previous karma that he needs to do to purify that karma or even further that karma if it is positive, and then get beyond it and be freed from that karma. Not caring for the action's fruit. Well, Paramahansa is the man that does it, because a wise person doesn't want more karma, but he wants a cessation of karma and their actions that do dissolve karma. So he doesn't want the fruit, he wants to not have the fruit. Why not be honest? See, people read books of philosophy and then try to twist their minds into all kinds of weird postures because, one, there's not a good translation, or two, there's not a good understanding of it. Anyway, he who performs that action, which is his duty, not caring for the action's fruit, is a renouncer and a yogi, a sannyasi and a yogi. You see, in real standard Hindu practice, the person, so-called grahasta, householder, has his Nitya Karma. There are certain things he's supposed to do for the welfare of the world. And in India, virtually no one is doing it. But that's their guilt. The Nitya Karma of a Grahasta is to daily perform certain rites which purify and spread illumination all around him, if not indeed throughout the world. I mean, this is possible. In our next satsang, we are going to talk about pitas, the establishment of a center which is imbued with spiritual power and spiritual light, and therefore, by its presence, uplifts not only those who are in the pita itself, which is an area, but perhaps all around. And this is very important. And every individual person following the path of Dharma should be a pita, an abode of Dharma, who radiates the wisdom and the higher consciousness reached through Dharma, and specifically through yoga sadhana. All right. But I got off the track. The one who is doing those rituals and does the fire sacrifice, at one point, he brings that to a close. And he feels, as the fire goes out or is extinguished, that the fire enters into him and that he becomes the sacrifice. And the radiance, the tejas, of the spiritual force invoked by the fire. And in the ancient times, the sannyasi wandered. He was considered that he should wander, never staying in a place more than a day or so, with the idea that wherever he went, he would purify the area. And of course, people could come to him and ask him for spiritual instruction, and he would give it. So he dedicated his life really to the upliftment, the highest upliftment of other people. So he who does these things, which will lead even to that, is already accruing the positive karma of that way of life. That which they call renunciation, know that to be yoga, because through yoga, ultimately, you leave everything behind. You don't just leave a house behind, or you don't just leave a job behind, and money behind, and material possessions behind. You leave the whole world behind. The world that has everybody hypnotized into thinking, oh, I couldn't live without it. I remember I had a yogi friend whose mother was displeased she was a yogi and wrote her a letter in which at the end she wrote, I just love the world so much, I can't ever hold it close enough. And of course, my yogi friend got the shivers when she read it, and she was right. So, that which they call renunciation, know that to be yoga. It's the other way around. This renunciation brings you to yoga, and the practice of yoga perfects that renunciation. Without renouncing selfish purpose, no one whatever becomes a yogi. You say, well, wait a minute, you want enlightenment. Isn't that a selfish purpose? No, because the ego, which is the perpetrator of selfishness, will be dissolved when enlightenment is attained. Therefore, uh, it's not in any way an egotistical or a selfish thing. It's realizing one's own purpose and going to that. For the sage desirous of attaining yoga, action is said to be the means, because everything is. If you read a sacred text, that's an action. When you meditate, it's an action. You say the japa. In Goraknath's exposition of Soham Yoga, you see, he says the knowledge of yoga is unparalleled. There never has been an equal to it, and never in the future will there be an equal. And therefore, and it will never be, of course, superseded. And then he says, japa as such as that. That is the joining of so to the inhalation and hum to the exhalation. So hum is the highest action. So when we sit in meditation, we close our eyes, close the mouth, become aware of the breathing and intone so when it comes in and hum when it goes out. That is the highest action, the highest karma there is, and therefore creates the highest karma that is possible for a human being. When he is truly attached neither to sense objects nor to actions and has renounced all purpose. The word purpose actually is sankalpa. Sankalpa is a very important word because it means with the strength of your will, deciding, I will do that or I will accomplish that. And when it is for higher things, it's a very positive thing. If it's for lower, then it's of the lower nature, of course. So then, when he's renounced all of that, he's said to have attained yoga, or really, he's begun to attain. Often, what people think as the beginning is just the end. A lot of people think that when they come to a certain state, well, I'm ready for enlightenment. The truth is, they haven't really yet been a yogi. Now they're ready to be a yogi. Excuse me, I have to reach over what should have been here. That is not. All right. One should uplift oneself by the lower self. Now, this is very interesting because we say, well, conquer the passions, conquer the lower part of ourselves, get rid of it, destroy it, and so on. But you see, everything in the world is made of energy. Therefore, all of our lower self, including our selfishness and our greediness and so on, it's all energy behavior. So all we need to do is repolarize it, and then it will, by of itself, No longer go toward what is negative and harmful and go only toward what is positive and not just healing, but liberating and transforming. So you have to use all of your being, your higher aspirations, which come from yourself, and your lower aspirations, that is the power of that, and turn it around to just go back in the other way. In other words, it's going down. Now, to have it go up. A lot of people talk about raising Kundalini. It means nothing. You can't raise Kundalini, it's the fundamental power of the universe. But it can go up, but it goes up by meditation alone, not by and as an effect of the meditation. There's nothing you can do specifically to get the rise in consciousness, but to purify yourself through meditation sadhana. The lower self can truly be a friend of the I'm sorry, the lower self can truly be a friend of the lower self. In other words, it becomes its own friend when it says, let's get up and get out of here. Like the prodigal son, I will arise and go. And you can use it as, say, stepping stones or even a stairway up. One should uplift oneself with the lower self. One should not degrade oneself. The lower self can truly be a friend of the lower self, and the lower self alone can be an enemy. So don't say the lower self is bad. It's the way we have mistakenly employed the lower self. That's very important. For example, a gun, as you've no doubt heard the expression, guns don't kill people. People kill people, but they use the gun. So then, we've used our lower self to degrade ourselves. Now we do it to raise ourselves. For him who has conquered himself by the lower self is a friend. But for him who has not conquered himself, the lower self remains hostile. This is one remains hostile like an enemy. This is one way we can tell whether a person is an authentic yogi or not. He doesn't say, "Oh, I renounce it, I hate it, and oh, how could I even have this inclination?" and so on. No, he says, "I can get a hold of that." It's like taming a wild animal. I can get a hold of it, tame the wild horse, then I could ride on it. There's a symbol of that in C.S. Lewis's very interesting book called uh, The Great Divorce. And it's about a man who leaves his body, goes out, finds himself in the afterworld, and then experiences there. And of course, because he wasn't particularly fervent for spiritual life, he goes to kind of a middling world. And he comes to one point where uh, there's a man with an evil looking little red lizard on his shoulder. And the little lizard keeps whispering in his ear. And it's understood that the whispers are urges for him to do things or be places where he will become increasingly degraded. And since he's sort of in this mid world where he has to uh, choose consciously the upward or lower path, well, a helper comes. You could say kind of like an angel comes and talks some to him, doesn't try to persuade him. It does tell him there's something higher, but does not say, so oh, please do it and so on. No, he has to make that decision on his own. And the little lizard just gets frantic and starts whispering more and more. And the man indicates, look, this thing's sitting on my shoulder. It's kind of a problem. And so the angel says, may I kill it? Well, I mean, he's fostered it, hasn't he? He's kept it as a pet. And finally, he just says, "Well, why don't you go ahead and you just go ahead and do it?" Uh, I can't, I can't. Man says, "No, you have to decide." And when he makes the right sankalpa, it's very interesting and says, "Yes, I agree. And I will end this." And the little evil lizard falls off of his shoulder and suddenly becomes a great horse. And he leaps on the horse and they ride away to where there's a path that goes up to a mountain and then into the sun itself. So the man rides what before was telling himself, ruin yourself, degrade yourself. And this is something that the yogi, the aspiring yogi, has got to truly understand. So that in him which says, oh, don't do it now and put it off till tomorrow and so on, that very same thing can, when polarized through constant japa, see, not just meditation, there has to be japa outside meditation, then it turns into the force, it's transmuted, repolarized, and what pushed him down lifts him up. The highest self of him who has conquered himself is peaceful. So that's the way to peace. No artificial thing needed. Just purify yourself, elevate yourself, and then you'll enter into peace. So the highest self of him who has conquered himself and is peaceful is thus steadfast in cold, heat, pleasure, pain, honor, and dishonor. Nothing can stop it. I've heard of great saints that have had terrible slanders told about them, and they just couldn't care less. The world is what it is. Anyone who met Anandamayi Ma with any level of consciousness would know that Ma was purity itself. Yet, Sri K. Bose, the general secretary, the entire administrator and runner of the Anandamayi Sangha, told me one day, every week somewhere in India in a newspaper, there appears a defamatory article about Ma. And he said, very defamatory. And Ma tells us to ignore it. If she would let us sue them, our Sangha would be the wealthiest religious organization in India. So that tells you the magnitude of the slander against Ma. And I well remember one time in Kanpur, a devotee of Ma, well, two devotees, husband and wife, that I've become acquainted with, they came to have the afternoon, early evening darshan of Ma, and they were both furious, but he especially was really, really furious. And he was almost speechless, but finally he got it out that they lived in an apartment complex, and one of the women who also lived there was going all around telling people that at lunchtime she had gone into a restaurant and found Anandamayi Ma sitting there eating lamb curry. Oh, they were furious. But you see, the Scots have a really good saying. We say, oh, they say so and so over there. Well, they say maybe that. And so the Scots saying is this: they have said, and they will say. So let them be saying. In other words, you have nothing to do with it. Just let it be. And that was the way it was with Ma, because Ma was the enemy to no one, and therefore, in her eyes, no one was an enemy to her. That's why in Brindaban that one time, that horrible man whom I'd taken note of earlier sneaked into her room and began doing all kinds of magical curses. to kill her. Can you imagine? And Ma sat there and just watched. She was very interested. And then some of the women who traveled with her came in and found this man doing, his mudras and all his curse things and drove him out. And they were very worried because they said, Ma never rejects anything. Ma accepts all what comes. So we're afraid this will have an effect on her because of this. By the way, it did, but that's a whole long story itself. And of course, uh, Ma came through it. But she did take on some negative things and she suffered. But she did it because if she hadn't done that, it would have gone and hit him and made him suffer. In fact, because death was the purpose, it could have killed him. And so Ma, you see, Ma didn't just benefit those who came to her with faith and with hope. She blessed everyone. This is the ideal of the yogi. Ma showed it in the world to show us that it could happen. But of course, I think usually it takes someone of Ma's level to show it, at least. Now it's up to us to follow it. All right. Oh, well, we've had 21 minutes. Therefore, I'll make that mark and we will go right up from there at the very next talk. So, namaste. Namaste.